Well, hello.
Hello, how are you today?
I am well. Marie is on the other side of the table from me so that we can both talk.
Good evening, Ash.
Good evening. How are you doing,
So,
Marie?
Oh, I'm okay overall. A little bit frustrated. My dryer quit blowing hot air today, so it's blowing air. It's just not hot air.
Oh no. So the
So
heating element in it went out?
I don't know if it's the heating element. There's a couple other possibilities, but it'll take some finagling to get back into it.
Okay.
one thing about everything on the motorhome is it is in there intentionally tightly so
Yes,
that it
tiny
doesn't
spaces.
move and it doesn't shake and it doesn't take a lot of space. So that creates very challenging repairs because you got to get into the thing. So yeah, I guess I get to see if I can dismantle that closet so I can get that thing out and look at it
Gotcha.
tomorrow.
So how was y'all's trip?
Well, we've had several. So I think last time we talked was right before we were leaving for Denver. So we were in Denver the first weekend of April.
Mhm.
We were at an event by Leif Hetland that Heidi Baker was one of the speakers, and it was good. Our role in it was pretty minimal. We did ministry, part of a ministry team for much of it, but probably the coolest part of all of that was we got to hang out with some of our favorite people that I didn't know they were going to be there until just a couple of days before. So I was, Putty was there, Putty Putman, and we wound up mooching off of him because he had the only car between all of us. So we spent a lot of time just hanging out, and that was worth the trip right there. And we got to hang out with Jim Taylor from The Point. Jim was there, and we had a good time there. And some of our other friends, Martin Gurens and Yasser and his wife from Cuba, one of our pastors that we've become connected to, friends with, was there. So it was an awesome time just to hang out with some of our friends. And so on our last day, a friend of mine that has been a coach online with me for a couple of years lives up in that area and had just called and said, "Hey, I saw you were in town. Would you come and let my husband and I take you and Marie to dinner?" And we had such a good time, Stacy and Mark Seaman, and had just almost felt like one of those divine appointments. There was so much connectedness and so much just to talk over and connect on, that we just had a wonderful time. And in some ways I left there thinking, this meeting might have been as important as anything else that happened this week. But anyway, that was a fantastic few days in Denver. And then we turned around, got home, and flew out 2 days later for Medellin, Colombia. And Medellin, we had a national Colombian Vineyard Church conference in Medellin, and we had almost all of our churches in Colombia were represented. Bogota Church was not represented in the meeting. Some of you know that the pastor, the leader and planter of that church, passed away in November, so they're still grieving pretty hard. So we didn't get to have them there. Just as an aside, Marie and I got to fly to Bogota while we were there and visit with Victor's family and just share with them and grieve with them, and just had a really sweet time with the family. But we wanted to do that since we knew they would not be able to get to the conference. But we had a marvelous time. Some of the big takeaways and important parts of that conference was that it was, certainly from a national perspective, I think one of the first that was completely put together by Colombia, that the leaders and pastors there did everything, got all the speakers lined up, got all the plans put together. They took charge of it start to finish. That is a wonderful step for our movement in Colombia, that they were able to put together just a magnificent conference. We were pretty blown away by just the connectedness of everybody. And literally, we had at least 2 churches I can think of that were represented that were new to it, that they've never been to one. And so to have them there, I think the theme, everybody there was talking about how much like a family reunion it felt. You know, that's kind of always what you're hoping for, but we really were able to touch that and to see that happening, because the folks who were there were just the unity, the family feel. People just kept commenting on it all weekend. So love seeing that.
Yeah. So to put that in context, how long have y'all been in Colombia?
Oh my goodness. I think formally as a what we refer to in Vineyard as a missions partnership, we were one of the very first ones to put together. So it's probably at least 20 years, probably closer to 25. So,
Yeah, because I know Bruce was the one that started that, right?
Bruce was one of the original, and I know that they had the Houston church, which is still part of it, was tied in some of those early things. But it's been around since, I'm guessing, 97-ish as a formal partnership of the Vineyard working there. And in that time, we've planted and seen a number of churches come and go, honestly. But the church that we were working with, the Medellin church, was one of those very early ones that's had just tremendous impact on their community there in the Medellin area. And truthfully, some of what was pretty special about this particular trip was we had reconnected with some people that had been tied to a Vineyard church in Colombia back in the mid-90s that had kind of, for whatever reason, found themselves scattered all over the country. And this event intentionally drew many of them back in. And so we reconnected with people who had been scattered, that are really part of our tribe. And it was very, very special to be able to pull them in relationally. And one we actually pulled in formally. They had a church plant in a city we had never been into before, but they had been there planting we'll call it a vineyard-like church for almost 10 or 12 years in that location. And we were able to lay hands on, and I say legitimize, but to be able to formally receive them into the movement and part of the family. So, sometimes we call those things, when there is a church that's not a Vineyard church, and we go in and they want to join as a Vineyard, that's normally a pretty intentionally longer process, because we want to make sure everybody actually kind of understands each other and has a relationship before it becomes a marriage, right? Yeah. And so it takes a while on purpose. This time we walked in, and the DNA, somebody made the statement, said, it feels like brothers that were torn apart at birth that suddenly found each other after many years. And I thought that's a pretty appropriate picture of what we walked into, because these guys were, they were us. It just, the DNA was there, and because that's what they were born out of, they just carried it with them and became separated, and were able to bring them back into the family while we were there. Wonderful thing. So one other, we actually were able to also receive one of our churches formally, lay hands on them and receive them, that we began with over 5 years ago. And I had on the calendar to come and do a formal receive them in and lay hands on them in April of 2020. We had the tickets purchased and the hotels booked. And as you can assume, that didn't happen on schedule. And so here we are 2 years later, and we were able to go do what we postponed for 2 years due to extenuating circumstances. So that was a joy to be able to go into Buga, which is a small town, small city outside of Cali, Colombia. So the truth is, Marie and I, with Carlos Quintanilla traveling with us, and Javier Urego, who is the pastor of the Medellin church, we covered some ground.
That's awesome.
I think we hit 5 cities in 10 days. So it was a busy trip.
Do you have any just kind of crazy stuff happen?
There were several. Well, first there's the physical. Doing that much travel, we had some adventures, blown tires and missing airplane connections, and getting to spend the night in an airport and reroute to another city in order to get where we were going. So we had those kind of adventures for sure. If you're looking for like the miraculous, we definitely had some opportunity to pray for people and see some things happening. But the meat of what happened was the relationships between pastors. And I would definitely call some of what we saw in the realm of the miraculous. It's been a long time coming to see some of the relationships that we saw.
Because there's been some conflict in those dynamics for a while, right?
Yeah, there's always been some tensions in different situations, and that's kind of the nature of doing some of the work we do. But it was the most unified I think we've ever experienced, and from that we came away extraordinarily encouraged about the future of the movement. Not to mention we have 2 new churches added to our group. So again, a very important event. I had some who kind of made the kind of statements of, you need to kind of mark this date on the history of Columbia Vineyard, because it felt like it had that kind of weight on it.
I think, the thing that was significant is, like Duke said, it had to do with relational blockages being removed and everybody being absolutely focused in on moving forward and the future of advancing the kingdom of God through the vineyard movement in the country of Colombia. And instead of seeing themselves as separate regions or states, as we would call it, they have really taken on a national identity. And it was always the thing of, we are here, we are one for the same purpose. And not only that, but actually putting feet to that, action to it, not just saying it, but doing things of resourcing each other. That's one of the different things. It was the idea of, we are here for each other. What do you need? Let us share with each other on what we're doing, and all of those dynamics, and seeing leaders coming to the forefront that are just servants for the Lord and servants for the vineyard there in Colombia, and who truly love all of the vineyard church there and the relationships. There at one point, it was just really humbling to be part of it. And, they were giving us thank you and credit for staying with it and all that. And we're just kind of looking at each other along with Carlos, going, what's happening now is definitely because of you guys being totally sold out to God and what he's wanting to do, and just excited about the future. And they have good reason to be excited.
Yeah, that's a pretty huge step, like them putting that whole thing together themselves, because the end goal is ultimately to get them to the point where they can self-govern, right?
Correct.
Well, that's definitely the partnership's goal. As the U.S. partners, we've always stated that our goal is to work alongside the national leaders in Colombia, and to do that, not to be an authority over, but to be a partner with, and to be able to help move toward that as a goal, that they are an independent association of vineyard churches. We're probably a ways from that. That's not something I expect is going to happen soon, but I think we are a lot further down the road towards it than we were 2 years ago or 4 years ago. We're starting to see some of the things we have to see for that to become a reality. And so I think everybody's, again, we're encouraged. It was a profitable trip for us as a movement. There was one point during the conference, one afternoon, they took the afternoon and had a picnic out in a park. And at one point, Marie and I were had removed ourselves from some of what was going on. We're sitting back at a picnic table away from the hubbub and just watched. And it was just one of those, one of those moments where you just, everything in you just wants to burst with the joy of seeing the kids play. And it was 100 people all interacting and playing and singing and laughing and dancing, and
I think the laughter was one of the things we enjoyed the most everywhere we went. Is we'd have some those times where we're talking about serious stuff or doing ministry or whatever, and those are all great, but just as much a kingdom part of the culture of kingdom family is just the hanging out and the amount. I don't think I've laughed as much on a trip as we did this one, just together, enjoying each other. Truly that sense, that comfortableness and appreciation of being together as family. And the laughter and watching these brothers and sisters and family together, they're just having a great time with each other. And that is just as much a kingdom move of the Holy Spirit as the other supernatural things we normally look for.
For sure, yeah. You guys are just mom and dad wherever you go, huh?
Yeah, I'm beginning to accept that reality. That's the role we've moved into.
It's just one of those benefits of being old.
Yeah, of which Duke celebrated a birthday since our last podcast, so he is officially old now. He's 60.
Yeah, they turned 60
Congratulations.
2 weeks ago, and they threw me a little birthday party in Medellin on the last day of the conference, and I didn't know what they were doing. They pulled me to the front, had me stand up front, and
Saying happy birthday.
And they sang happy birthday, and then somebody walked up with what I thought was a candle I was supposed to blow out, and suddenly it exploded confetti everywhere. It scared the way out of me, but they did it upright. And just as the amount of traveling we did, I do this because I don't think we've ever done anything quite like it before, but we had 14 airplanes in 10 days.
Wow.
I found my limit.
Yeah. So you're talking about different flights or legs of flights. We had 14 in 10 days.
We need to talk about and we won't name the city, but one place where we were at in an area of the country that had just opened up recently to be safe enough to travel to. What happened while we were there?
So we go into a city out in the jungle we've never been to. And this was let's say we were looking at a work that the Medellin church has been doing in that city. It's not a church or a church plant at this point, but there are some believers there that are beginning to form together, and they wanted us to come meet them. So we're in this city in the jungle, the most jungle I probably have ever been in. I just noticed that first thing, I didn't have any cell service, which was the first place in Colombia this trip I had not been able to get any cell service, and no internet in the hotels. And I thought that was curious. And then there was the police presence was much higher than I have experienced in Colombia in a dozen years or more. And so I was curious, asking about why are the police out in such force? I haven't seen that. So it's very dangerous here. That they've had some guerrilla activity in the jungles outside the city, and they just bombed the communications towers, and so we had lost all the communication in town. And I kind of chuckled at, with Marie going, well, it's nice that they let us know that this is not a safe area. after we get here and not before. But
Yeah.
Found out that was intentional because they didn't want us to say, no, we're not coming,
Oh,
so,
lovely.
which
so-
we would have come anyway, but it was just kind of funny because we're like, oh, wow. Duke's like, I haven't seen it like this since the 90s, my first few trips to Colombia, because it wasn't just the police, it was also like what we would call our National Guard here. You know, they were in the lobbies of our hotels and everything, and we just thought they were hanging out because it was air conditioned, and turns out it was because at night they said, whatever you do, don't walk down the street at night, there's a problem.
Yeah.
We went, okay, no problem. But we had a good time. I didn't ever feel unsafe, so, but it was just kind of humorous.
but like I said, that's more, at least out on the frontier where we were, it's a lot. It was definitely different than when we're in the urban centers, Bogota or Medellin or Cartagena or somewhere like that. So,
And definitely out there, I told Duke, which I told him right away, I said, the supernatural activity as far as spiritual warfare here, I could sense it as soon as we got there and found out, yes, you know, because I was like going, I bet there's, since we're in the jungle, this, you know, the river separates us from the jungle, just thick jungle. And I asked him, I said, so, you know, is there a lot of, you know, witchcraft practice and all that? And they, oh yeah, definitely. That's very common here. And one of the young ladies that we met who's newer Christian and everything, that's what she came out of. So it was like, well, okay, so there was a lot more spiritual activity going on, and yet at the same time, it was so cool to hear their stories. Each one of those people that we met there were about 5 of them that we met there, in that 6 in that city. Each one of them had a supernatural encounter with Jesus coming to them, saying, come in one form or another, saying, come follow me.
Wow.
You know, of like having a dream and not knowing who Jesus was before. And then in the dream, Jesus saying, go read this passage in the Bible, find a Bible and find this passage. And the passage that they went to was in Matthew, where Jesus was calling them to follow him and saying, come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men.
Wow.
And not knowing what to do that, and how God orchestrated that through Javier and a couple other people there, that they explained what that meant. And each one of them had some form of that kind of a supernatural encounter where nobody led them to Jesus, but where Jesus came to them.
Those kind of stories are so cool.
In the midst of a fortress for darkness, literally in that area for so many years. And Jesus just breaking through. It's like when you hear those stories from Islamic countries where that happens. And to encounter those same types of stories was like, oh, this is just so amazing. And you could see it was genuine. It was real, because at least half of them had no framework for that.
which also having words of knowledge and prophetic words for these guys were so easy. I'm like, why is it so easy? And it would rock the world that they were so ready for that and could receive it so easily. So just again, a little bit new territory for us on that, physically and spiritually.
And it was easy because they had that supernatural background of like a different stripe, sort of.
I guess.
Well, their worldview is, supernatural is something they absolutely know, have experienced, and have lived in. But
I think just for us, we felt like it was just flowing very easily for us in that environment. Whether I don't have an explanation of that other than I just think that the Lord was working extraordinarily in this group's lives. And we just got to kind of step into that. But pretty amazing time.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Then we got home and turned around and went to Mississippi and ministered with Roger Cunningham at the point. A lot of the fun of that is being with people you just love to be with. Roger Cunningham and Yasser Serrano and who else was there? Of course, Jim Taylor. We love being with Jim anytime we can.
And Martin.
And Martin Burens. And so we all got to do that event together. Marie actually spoke the Sunday morning early service there. And the ministry time there was pretty hot. There was a lot going on.
Each service was distinct, though, in, if you will, the flavor of the ministry. The first service where I spoke and where we were the primary ministering people along with the rest of them, but that was a more, if you will, quiet, but it was a sweetness of his presence and a deep, quiet work going on in a lot of people that you could just see as we're ministering and really experiencing the love of the Father's heart and the reality of, even in the midst of difficult times, that Jesus, a lot of people were like, they could finally see that Jesus has been with them the whole time, where they have felt like he's been distant, or where have you been during this time in my life? And then just the reality of the truth of, oh, he never left. He's been here the whole time. And to see the healing, more emotional healing happening, that first service. So that was good. And then Yasser from Cuba did the second morning service, and now he's a fireball. But his was more of a challenging, too much, thing but everybody was just like, oh my gosh, it was so good. And the ministry time there was more of a tangible fire to it, a power to it. And then Sunday night was Roger. And of course, Roger did his classic, do you really want it? And oh man, just a bomb exploded in that place. Of course, you were there.
Yeah.
And just to see all the stuff happening then, I really want you to share one power story from that day, though, because there was a pretty dramatic healing that he was a part of, that the Lord used him in, for a gentleman there at the point.
Just a guy had come forward and had actually several physical issues, but one that I was noticing was his arm. He wasn't able to use his arm easily, and asked about it. And he said he had some kind of what he thought was a nerve problem, but he's just kind of getting weaker and weaker and losing the use of his right arm.
And the doctors didn't.
And the doctors were not being able to give him much solution, not knowing what it was. Somebody had said, seems like it might be a pinched nerve, but we can't, we hadn't been able to see what it is going on. But it was obviously distressing him, and he was having trouble even just holding it up to try to use it. And so anyway, I prayed over it, and it wasn't that dramatic. It was a quick prayer, and he starts waving his hand over his head and opening his fist. It was pretty cool. We see a lot of those kind of things, but every time I'm still amazed. If there's times when it happens so fast, then I want to go like, are you sure? That's one of those where I just prayed like 5 seconds and he starts moving it. And my first thing I want to go and say, are you sure? He's waving it over his head. But it always is, it's always amazing. Every time it's amazing when God touches somebody like that, and when it happens so quickly and so dramatically. One thing it does is there's no question you had a blooming thing to do with that, right? That was nothing. We didn't have anything to do with it other than being there.
Yeah.
And the follow-up being, he's still healed.
Yeah, he came in on that was Sunday morning. And on Sunday night, he came to the service, and I checked it, and he's like waving at me from the back of the room, saying, it's good, it's good, it's good. So that's cool. Love that. Some other folks got deliverance. Some folks that we've ministered to, word of knowledge led to somebody being delivered.
Really?
And so it's just, it was fun.
That was the other thing I think that has been a constant, at least for me on this series of trips that we've done now through April, beginning of May, is having a word or a sense and a word of knowledge definitely about emotional healing and deliverance. But the deliverance, that thing of, there's a spiritual component to this, and nearly everywhere we went, there was freedom, being set free from the supernatural tormenting or empowering from the kingdom of darkness that was keeping people imprisoned or stuck where they were at, and seeing that lift and them going, oh my gosh, it's gone, and to see the release and the freedom happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, just sharing all that makes me tired. It's been a busy month is all I mean by that.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on. We've been home, and I say that automatically now. We're home in our RV in Tomball, Texas, and it's good to be here. We've been here now 10 days probably without going out of town. So that's been nice.
It's good to have a rest.
It is.
Y'all got anything else coming up?
We actually have nothing in May that has us going out of town at this point in time. We are going out for national or regional vineyard conferences, going to crank up in June. So we'll be gone in June. We'll be gone 2 weeks in July, and we'll be gone 4 weeks from mid-August through mid-September. And then a conference at the end of September, and then one in November. That's what we know of at the moment.
Hey, May, come say hello.
Hey, May.
Stop.
She said, hey, stop.
Hey, stop. Okay. She's growing up.
She is.
So. All right, dear. We love you.
Love you too.
Ash.
Love you guys too. Y'all take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.